question is to the Premier. This morning, the FAO released its expenditure monitoring tracking provincial spending, which revealed that contrary to the government's pedantic insistence that they have not spent unallocated funds, quite the opposite. The balance in unallocated funds have actually increased. Speaker, thousands of Ontarians are going to stay home away from their families this holiday season because the government failed to flatten the second wave curve. Speaker, they had the funds. They were given the funds by the federal government. They did not ramp up testing and contact tracing in the summer when they knew the second wave was coming. They did not invest in schools to make them safe places for learning for education workers and students. They did not shore up COVID hotspot communities like my riding of Scarborough-Guildwood and Brampton and Windsor. Speaker, does the Premier think it's appropriate to sit on billions of dollars in funds while millions of Ontarians are in lockdown?
Thank you. Recognize the President of the Treasury Board for response.
Well, Mr. Speaker, thank you to the member opposite for that question, but clearly she has her numbers wrong. Let me tell you, this is the same member who said that the $9.3 billion that we set aside, that we weren't spending any of it. She said we were spending zero. We actually spent over $6 billion of it. It's only prudent to set aside more money, Mr. Speaker, because now we're up to almost $12 billion in set-asides. Why? Of which 80% has been spent. 80%. Mr. Speaker, she referenced testing. $1.4 billion in additional COVID testing in the last 6 months of this fiscal year alone. The Minister of Education mentioned, thank you for mentioning some numbers, Minister of Education, $1.3 billion in additional funding for education to keep our children safe and our teachers safe. Mr. Speaker, we also put in another $1 billion additional money into personal protective equipment. Mr. Speaker, the numbers tell the story. The money is being spent, and we're very proud of what we're doing.
Thank you. Back to the member from Scarborough-Guildwood for supplementary question.
Speaker, we're going to have to disagree with the numbers. Right as the second wave was heating up, the government underspent by $278 million in public health. That's almost $300 million that could have been used to ramp up contact tracing and testing efforts. They had underspent by an even greater $477 million in post-secondary education. This is in the face of deep cuts to OSAP while students are accumulating more debt to pay their tuitions. Despite the title of their budget, Speaker, the government has pinched pennies to the tune of $12 billion instead of investing to protect and to support Ontarians. This inertia is unconscionable. Speaker, through you, when will the Premier stop being cheap in the pandemic? Or is this going to be where he gives Ontarians a lump of coal this Christmas with a post-COVID bump in cases?
Thank you. Back to the President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, we're hoping to give all Ontarians a vaccine for this Christmas, Mr. Speaker. You know, that's what we're planning to do. Mr. Speaker, it's interesting coming from the member opposite who increased the debt by $200 billion of the previous government and had a qualified opinion from the Auditor General for a number of years. We've had 3 years of clean opinions. Mr. Speaker, the FAO report that she references indicates that spending this fiscal year from March to now, we've revised up by $14.5 billion, Mr. Speaker, 8.8%. As well, year over year, up 7.6%. I don't know about your math, but my math says that that's an increase, and we are spending the money. And the Auditor General and all the other officials are supporting us on this, Mr. Speaker. We won't stop working hard on behalf of the individuals and the families of this great province to keep them safe.
Thank you.